He cheated on me with 7 women, got arrested, and nearly ruined my life. But when he cried and promised therapy had changed him, I believed him. I packed my life and my child's life into boxes, crossed an ocean, and started over, again. Now he's back to smoking, drinking, ignoring our son, and saying it's my fault he can't love me anymore. About 4 months ago, I packed up my entire life, everything my 4-year-old and I knew, and moved across the ocean to give his father another chance. It was supposed to be our fresh start. Our 4th, to be exact. He told me that he had finally been diagnosed with bipolar disorder, that he was on medication and therapy and really working on himself. He said he was ready to be a partner, a father, the man he'd always promised to become. He said this time would be different. I wanted to believe him. I wanted my son to have both his parents, and I wanted to believe that people can change, that all the pain, all the chaos of the past had led to this new, healthy version of us. But I was careful. I told him plainly that I couldn't let my walls down until I saw real consistency. Not words, not promises, actions. He agreed. He seemed to understand. At first, it was good. He was attentive, present, calm. He wanted to spend time with our son, wanted to help with meals and bedtime. I let myself hope. But within weeks, the cracks started to show. He lost his insurance from his old job and stopped taking his medication. He stopped therapy too, said he couldn't afford it, that he was fine now anyway. I tried to be patient. He had a new job, a new start, and I didn't want to push. But soon, the old patterns began creeping back in. The irritability, the blame, the emotional distance that would turn into bursts of anger. Every time I tried to talk about it, he turned it around. He said I made it hard for him, that I wasn't being supportive enough, that my guard made him feel unloved. He said I was the reason he couldn't change, that if I'd just made things easier, he wouldn't have given up. And now he says he's done. Like all the effort, all the miles traveled, all the emotional rebuilding I've done were just meaningless. Looking back now, I can see how it all began. We met 6 years ago, and I fell fast. He love-bombed me in ways I didn't even recognize back then. Constant affection, endless compliments, grand promises about our future together. It felt refreshing to have someone so sure of me, someone who wanted commitment from the start. He introduced me to his mom within weeks, talked about kids and marriage, as if we were already building a life together. I thought, finally, someone who knows what he wants. For a while, I even thought I was the problem. I wanted to take things slow, to build something solid, but he made me feel like holding back was a lack of love. So after 4 months, I gave in, I went all in. We moved in together. I met his family. I thought we were happy. He was so affectionate, so enthusiastic about our future, that I ignored all the little red flags, the mood swings, the jealousy, the moments where his words and actions didn't quite match up. Then, 9 months into the relationship, I found out he'd been cheating, not just messaging girls, but sleeping with at least one of them during the first 6 months we were together. My heart shattered. I always told myself I would never stay with a cheater. My dad cheated. My brother cheated. My uncles, even my grandfather. I grew up watching the women in my family look the other way, excuse the behavior, accept apologies that were never sincere. I promised myself I'd be different. But when I reached out for advice, all the women I trusted told me the same thing. If he's good to you now, if it only happened early on, give him another chance. They said men make mistakes. They said at least he was honest now. They said, you have to forgive if you want to build a life. And I wanted so badly to believe them. So I did what I swore I never would. I stayed. I wanted to believe that the version of him I fell for, the one who made big promises and looked at me like I was his whole world, still existed somewhere underneath all the chaos. But just as things started to feel like they were getting back on track, we ran headfirst into our second hurdle, his family. They're Eastern European, very traditional, and from the start, they made it clear they weren't thrilled about me being a woman of color. At first, I brushed it off, thinking maybe with time they'd come around once they saw how much we cared about each other. But it only got worse. One day, I found out they'd actually taken a photo from my social media, just a normal picture of me, and brought it to a psychic. That psychic apparently told them every lie imaginable, that I was a gold digger, that I was going to trap him with 2 sons, the irony being that I come from a more financially stable family than his, that I was bad luck and would ruin his life. They believed every word. They cornered him with it. And eventually, they gave him an ultimatum, either he cut me off or they would cut him off. He chose me. And at the time, I thought that meant something. I thought it meant he was finally growing into his own person, standing up for us, for what we were building. But now, looking back, I realize something changed in him after that. It's like he carried their disapproval like poison in his veins. Even though he told me it didn't matter, something in his eyes started to shift. The way he looked at me wasn't the same anymore. He started to second-guess me, question my motives, accuse me of things that didn't even make sense. I think, deep down, their words got under his skin more than he'd ever admit. A month later, COVID lockdowns hit, and the whole world stopped. He spiraled. We found out I was pregnant around that time, and instead of bringing us closer, it tore us apart. He started saying he didn't even know if he believed in marriage anymore. He wasn't sure he wanted to be with me. He said he felt trapped. Those words broke something in me because I hadn't trapped him. I'd done the opposite. I'd given him freedom after every mistake, every lie, every time he'd hurt me. Then came the hardest part. He wanted me to have an abortion. We fought endlessly about it. He said the timing was wrong, that he wasn't ready, that we barely knew who we were anymore. But for me, it wasn't that simple. For years, my doctors had warned me that having children might not be possible because of how severe my endometriosis had gotten. This pregnancy wasn't just another bump in the road. It was a miracle I never thought I'd get to experience. My family, seeing how much I was struggling, offered for us to come stay with them in my home country. They said it would be safer, more comfortable, a bigger house, more support. And honestly, I felt a wave of relief at the thought of being surrounded by people who genuinely cared for me, especially as the world outside shut down. Plus, my visa had expired where I was living with him, so I couldn't legally work anyway. It made sense to go. We told him he didn't have to come. I wanted him to make his own decision without guilt or pressure. My family even told him directly, "We've got her. You don't need to force anything." But he insisted. He said he wanted to come, that he wanted to be a family, that we'd be happy again once the baby came. So he came. He packed up his things, boarded a plane, and followed me across an ocean. For a little while, I thought maybe this was our moment, our redemption arc. He told me he loved me every night, kissed my stomach, said we were going to do it right this time. So much happened after that. Honestly, too much to even properly fit into words, but I'll try to make sense of it. If I went into every detail, this would turn into a novel, so I'll list it out, though each line feels like another chapter of exhaustion and heartbreak. He mentally checked out. That's really the only way to describe it. My entire pregnancy, he was barely there. My dad had lent him a car in case I needed to be rushed to the hospital, something that gave all of us a bit of peace of mind, but instead of using it to be there for me, he used it to disappear for hours. No explanation. No messages. Just silence. I'd sit alone, heavily pregnant, wondering if he was okay, if he was coming back, or if I'd have to go into labor alone. Then there was the money. My parents had insisted we save as much as possible for the baby. They didn't want us spending anything unnecessary. We were staying with them rent-free, they covered almost everything, and all we really had to do was buy some groceries here and there. We should have had a good amount put away. But one morning, he woke me up looking pale and shaken. He'd lost $20,000, every bit of our savings, to a crypto scam. He said he was trying to make smart investments for our future. I was furious, but somehow I still forgave him. But after I gave birth, he just disappeared emotionally. It was like living with a ghost. He got obsessed with crypto trading, waking up at 3 a.m. to check charts, staring at his phone for hours, getting angry if I tried to talk to him. He wasn't helping with the baby, barely looked at me, barely existed in our world. It got so bad that my parents actually sat both of us down one night. They told him, gently but firmly, that his son needed him, that I needed him. He nodded, apologized, said all the right things, and then went right back to his phone. Then came the visa issues. COVID had made everything harder, and delays meant my son and I had to stay behind while he went back to the country where we'd first met to return to work. It was hard, but I thought the distance might reset things, give us both space to reflect and come back stronger. I couldn't have been more wrong. When it was finally time for us to fly back and reunite, I got the shock of my life. He wasn't coming to the airport to meet us. He couldn't, because he'd been arrested. He was accused of stealthing one of 7 women he had cheated on me with. 7. I remember sitting on the floor, phone in my hand, feeling like my entire body had gone numb. I was sick to my stomach, not just from betrayal, but from the thought of my son growing up without a father if he went to jail. Against every instinct of self-preservation, I got on a plane anyway, not to save him, but to let him see his son one last time before he went to trial. Fast forward about a year. We were back in London, and somehow I had convinced myself to give him yet another chance. I told myself that maybe this time would be different. Maybe the stress of the case had changed him, made him see life differently. He'd been charged and was awaiting trial, and I told myself that if things went well, if he was acquitted, he'd finally settle down. The months leading up to the trial were brutal. I had to read the case files, sit through endless discussions with lawyers, and relive every trigger imaginable. Despite everything he'd put me through, I agreed to testify as a character witness, because as much as I knew he was selfish and reckless, I didn't believe he was guilty of what he'd been accused of. He was acquitted. And for a brief moment, I thought maybe we'd been given a clean slate. That after everything, after all the pain, we could finally rebuild. He said he was grateful. He said he wanted to change. He said he wanted to be a family again. But within weeks, he started to unravel all over again. The drinking got worse. The smoking. The late nights. The parties. He started going out and not coming home until 5 a.m. Sometimes he'd bring friends over I'd never met, and they'd crash on the couch or the floor. And when I finally stood up for myself, when I said, enough, that I couldn't live like this anymore, that our son couldn't grow up watching this chaos, he lost it. He turned it around on me again. Said I was trying to control him. Said I didn't appreciate what he'd been through. And then, the final blow, he tried to kick me out. Those are just the big things, the ones that stand out like bruises that never fade. But honestly, there's so much more. So many smaller moments that chipped away at me piece by piece until I barely recognized myself anymore. I lost who I was in this relationship. Somewhere between all the apologies and the promises, I became someone who was constantly walking on eggshells, constantly trying to be enough for a man who made me feel small, ugly, and unwanted. I spent years begging for connection, for tenderness, for the simplest kind of love, the kind that feels safe. I tried everything to make it work. I read every article about communication and boundaries, went to therapy, learned how to regulate my own emotions, and still, nothing changed. He always made me feel like I was the problem, like if only I could make things easier for him, love him a little harder, forgive him a little faster, maybe he wouldn't treat me the way he did. And I tried to understand him. I really did. I told myself that maybe he just didn't love me anymore, and that was okay. But every time I finally built up the strength to leave, to pack my life and my son's life back into suitcases, to fly home to my parents and try to start over, he would come after me. Every time. He'd cry, apologize, promise this time would be different. He'd beg me, beg my family, swear he was getting help, that his mental health was under control, that he couldn't live without us. And every single time, I believed him. Which brings me to this last year, the one that was supposed to be our final fresh start. When he told me I had to leave our flat, I finally thought this is it. I was done. I called my parents, asked to come home, quietly quit my job, packed my life up again, and didn't even tell him I was leaving until I was already gone. It felt both terrifying and freeing. But like clockwork, he came back again. He cried, he pleaded, told me that everything had been because of his mental health, that he was on medication now, seeing someone getting real help. And against all reason, I wanted to believe it. I told him I couldn't just open my heart again right away, that I needed to see change before I could be loving and affectionate again. He agreed. Said he understood. Said he'd prove it. So here I am now, 4 months later, and I've spent most of it crying. There have been endless arguments, moments where I felt like I'm losing my mind, where I can't tell what's real anymore. Just like before, he started off okay. Kind. Attentive. Present. But little by little, it slipped. The mental load of everything, the house, our son, the bills, the day-to-day life, all fell back on me. He checked out again. He started smoking again, something that has always been a huge issue between us. And his tone shifted. The way he spoke to me became sharp, dismissive, like I was nothing more than background noise. Then came the late nights. The ones where he'd go out until 7 in the morning, stumble home, and sleep through the day while our son begged him to wake up and play. Watching our little boy slowly stop asking broke me more than anything else. I'd try to wake him, try to talk, but it was always the same. He was tired, stressed, needed space. And when I finally stood up for myself, when I started arguing back, when I told him I wouldn't stay in this cycle again, he turned it all on me. He says I made it too hard, that I wasn't loving enough, affectionate enough, patient enough, that if only I had made it easier for him, things could have been different. He says he's at his breaking point, as if I haven't been at mine for years. He says that's why he's rude, why he doesn't care about my triggers or how his words cut into me. Now, I feel completely stuck. I haven't found a job yet. It's expensive here, and with a child, it's nearly impossible to find accommodation on my own. I can't go back to my parents again. I can't face them, can't admit that after everything, I still ended up here. They think things are better, that I've finally found stability, and I don't have the strength to tell them the truth.